urgent. The night in Houston, that changed everything. What Curry's injury means for the Warriors. You know that moment when the entire gym goes silent and you think, no, not fair to him? That's what every Warriors fan felt when they saw Stephen Curry limping in Houston. If you love this team, I know it immediately crossed your mind. Is the season over? Is reconstruction coming? Is this the beginning of the end? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, how serious the injury really is, how it really changes the Golden State Warriors season, and most importantly, why this moment may not be the end, but the turning point that no one was expecting. Before we get into this analysis in depth, I'm going to ask you something very quickly. If you are one of those who suffer from every injury, vibrate with every three-pointer, and experience the emotional roller coaster that is rooting for the Warriors, this channel was made for you. So sign up below, activate the bell so you don't miss any updates about Curry and Golden State, and leave a like, because this shows YouTube that this content is important for Warriors Nation. And look, don't leave the video now. What I'm going to show you next is not just injury news, it's context, it's reading the game, it's the future of the season. If you want to understand what this night in Houston really means for the team, stay with me until the end, because every detail counts. Let's go. When we talk about basketball, we almost always remember the trick plays, the impossible three-pointers, the historic blocks, or that basket at the end of the clock that becomes an eternal replay. But sometimes, what really marks a fan is not the outburst of celebration. It's silence. You know that kind of silence that seems to weigh heavily in the air? The court is full, thousands of people around, but for a few seconds, everything disappears. That's exactly what happened Wednesday night in Houston. Instead of screams, horns, and a shaking camera, what remained was the image that no Warriors fan wants to see. Stephen Curry limping, leaving the play, with his body saying, "Enough for today." And that's what I want to talk to you about. Not only about the injury itself, but about what it represents, what it can do to the team, and why, even at a time like this, there is still real reason to believe in this squad. So, settle in there, because the idea is to guide you step by step. What happened, what the doctors said, the impact on the court, and, most importantly, what lies ahead. Welcome back to the channel. Here you can closely follow everything about the Golden State Warriors. News, analysis, context, fan outbursts, and of course those conversations that we would usually have in a circle among friends after the game. Today is not a day for highlights. Today is the day to face reality, understand the scenario, and decide whether our reaction will be one of despair or maturity. Nightlife in Houston. More than just a game. Let's go back to that night. Warriors and Rockets in Houston, heavy game atmosphere, the kind where no one wants to give in. It wasn't just another regular season game. It was obvious that both teams saw that confrontation as a test of character. The score was tight, 104-100 for Houston, with just over 35 seconds on the clock. A situation in which any wrong decision is costly. Golden State was still breathing, trying to find a fluid attack in the final minutes, looking for a clear shot. A foul suffered, any opening to change the story of the game. And, as almost always happens in these moments, the ball was in his hands. Stephen Curry. He was already suffering from physical contact, being hunted by the defense from start to finish. Even so, he continued to look for spaces, running without the ball, trying to break the marking, until, suddenly, something goes off the script. In a change of direction, Curry slows down, takes a few different steps than normal, and begins to limp. It wasn't a dramatic fall. There was no scream of pain. There was no movie scene. But, precisely for that reason, it was even more distressing. The broadcast noticed it right away. The camera closed on him. The arena was left with a mixture of doubt and apprehension. And on the other side of the screen, thousands of fans felt that involuntary tightness in their chests. Anyone who follows Curry's career knows, every time he puts his hand on his leg, knee, or ankle, his heart races. The history of injuries at the beginning of his career left marks that never completely disappear from the fans' memory. The context of the season, why this moment weighs so much now, to understand why this scene had such an impact, we need to look at the season as a whole. It is not possible to analyze this injury as an isolated event because it is directly linked to what the team has been experiencing. The Warriors came into this game with a record of 10 wins and 10 losses, half season per each side, neither disaster nor absolute excitement. a team in unstable balance trying to figure out whether it's going to climb the slope or slide down for good. There were nights when Golden State remembered the team that dominated the league. Solid defense, attack with constant movement, three-pointers falling, players understanding each other almost instinctively, but there were also matches in which nothing worked. Passing errors, poor rotations, ball stuck in the hands, difficulties in closing tight games. It's a cast in transition, new pieces arriving, young players asking for space, veterans trying to maintain the standard, coaching staff adjusting rotations and experimenting with formations. In the midst of all this, one certainty sustained the fan. As long as Stephen Curry was on the court, there was hope. He was, and continues to be, the emotional and technical anchor of this team. The player who changes the level of the squad, who transforms an average team into a constant threat. The numbers that show the size of Curry's responsibility. When we say that Curry carries the team, it's not an exaggeration, it's a fact. In 16 games this season, he was averaging close to 27.9 points per game, in addition to assists, rebounds, and above all, efficiency. Hitting almost half of his shots from the field and close to 40% of his three-pointers, he is not only producing in volume, but with very high quality. Now add this to another point. Age. At 37 years old, at a stage in his career where many players are already at the end of their rope, with reduced minutes, Curry continues to assume absolute protagonism. He is not just the specialist shooter who comes in and solves the problem. He is the engine that gives the team rhythm, the player who pulls the defense away from the box, who creates space for his teammates, and who gives Golden State its identity. And the moment before the injury reinforced this even more. Curry was on a streak of 3 games with more than 30 points. He seemed to revive younger versions of himself, reminding the league that time may pass, but his impact is still very much alive. The pace, the confidence, the focused gaze, everything indicated that he was entering one of those phases where you only need to look at him to know that something special could happen. That's precisely why that scene in the last seconds in Houston weighed so much. It wasn't just a physical discomfort. It was the interruption of a moment of ascension, of confidence, of reconstruction of the team around its star. The diagnosis, what a quadriceps injury actually is. After the initial scare came what every fan fears but needs to face, the medical evaluation. After the game, the Warriors' health team examined Curry and, after the first tests, the diagnosis pointed to a bruise on his right quadriceps. Let's translate this calmly. A contusion is, in simple terms, a hard blow that causes a bruise in the muscle. It's not a cut, it's not a broken bone, it's not a torn ligament. It is the muscle that suffers the impact, accumulates blood in the internal region, and responds with pain, stiffness, and momentary loss of strength. And here comes a vital point. We are not talking about structural damage to the knee, ankle, or ligament. There were no reports of rupture or serious muscle strain. This completely changes the scenario. Ligament injuries can mean months on the sidelines. A bruise generally takes days or a few weeks as long as it is treated seriously. The standard protocol was followed. More detailed examination with imaging, constant monitoring, adequate medication, control of swelling and pain, and a gradual rehabilitation plan. The initial forecast, according to reports, is that he will be out for about a week, perhaps a little longer, depending on how his body responds. Yes, that scares. But this is where the difference between panicking and taking a deep breath begins. Why, even so, there is reason for relief. When Steve Kerr was asked about Curry's condition, his reaction already sent an important signal. He said that when he learned it was a quadriceps injury and not a knee or ankle injury, he felt relief. And that is not a force of expression. A coach who has seen so much in basketball knows what types of injuries tend to leave scars and what types of injuries, although painful, tend to be overcome without major long-term consequences. Chronic ankle or knee problems can limit a player's career. A well-treated quadriceps injury, on the other hand, is the type of situation that can usually be resolved with rest, physical therapy, and proper return planning. Treatment follows the classic script. Rest at first, ice, compression, and elevation to control swelling and inflammation. Then comes the rehabilitation part, with light exercises, mobility recovery, gradual strengthening. No heroism, no rushing back, no putting the player on the court just because of external pressure. The fact that the Warriors are opting to give him about a week or so more already shows a responsible stance. Doctors know that this is the face of the franchise, the player around whom everything is built. Forcing an early return because of a few games in December doesn't make sense when you think about an entire season and a few more years of your career. The immediate impact: what changes without Curry on the court? Now let's face the question that naturally arises. What happens to the team while Curry is out? The most honest answer is simple. Everything changes. The Warriors' offense is shaped around his presence. The way the opposing defenses position themselves, the type of blocking the team uses, the movement of the ball, the movement without the ball, everything revolves around the constant threat he represents. Without Curry, the rival defense doesn't need to send 2 or 3 players to try to contest a shot or stop an infiltration. Spacing decreases, other players' shots become more contested. The passing game loses fluidity. The pace, which is the team's trademark, is in danger of slowing down. But that doesn't mean all is lost. It does mean that the style needs to adapt. Instead of depending on Curry's gravity, that ability to attract defenders even without touching the ball, the team will have to find different ways to create an advantage. More play inside the paint, more cuts towards the basket, more patience in constructing plays. And, at this point, another layer of this story emerges: opportunity. The chance that appears in difficult times. As strange as it may seem to say this in the midst of an injury, periods like this reveal who is truly ready to take responsibility. This could be the moment when some Warriors players stop being just compliments and become protagonists of important parts of the season. Andrew Wiggins can, and needs, be more aggressive offensively, not just waiting for the game to come to him, but creating situations, attacking the basket, calling plays. Jonathan Kuminga has a chance to show he can sustain a bigger load of minutes with consistency, not just flashes of talent. Moody can solidify his role as a reliable player on both ends of the floor. Veterans like Draymond Green gain even more importance, not only in defense but also in offensive construction, organizing plays, reading the defense, helping to create situations in which teammates find better shots. And names like Chris Paul can be the necessary stabilizer in moments of pressure, bringing control, cadence, and experience. It is in these intervals, without its best player, that a squad shows whether it is shallow or deep. And teams fighting for titles rarely depend on a single name, no matter how brilliant he may be. They need a group that, on different nights, can share the weight of decisions. The timeline. Why timing of injury matters. Another point that needs to be taken into account is the time of the season in which this happens. We are talking about something around the 20th game, still far from the final stretch, with many clashes to come. It is not an injury occurring on the eve of the playoffs or in the last few weeks, when each result decides position in the table. That doesn't make the situation pleasant, of course, but it means that there is real time to reorganize, go through this period with balance, and welcome Curry back in full condition before the games take on even greater weight. In other words, it is better to deal with this absence now than at a time when a drop in performance could cost you control of the court, direct classification, or even a place. The human factor. Curry's relationship with his own body. Beyond numbers, tactical schemes, and predictions, there is one thing that cannot be forgotten. Stephen Curry is not a beginner learning to deal with his own physique. He is an athlete who has already gone through complex recovery processes and therefore has a deep understanding of the body's signals. Early in his career, ankle injuries almost changed his trajectory. It was necessary to completely restructure the way of training, strengthen the base, rethink movements. Since then, he took every detail of the preparation seriously. This does not prevent injuries from happening. High-level sport always carries this risk, but it greatly increases the chances of a successful recovery. He knows when he needs to stop, he knows when he can push a little harder, and he understands the importance of following the plan drawn up by healthcare professionals. All of this plays into the idea that we are talking about an obstacle on the way, not an insurmountable wall. The strategic look. What the team can learn from this phase. From Coach Steve Kerr's point of view, this temporary absence also has a strategic side. Without Curry, he is practically forced to test other combinations, give more minutes to certain players, see who responds well to the pressure and who still needs to mature. These answers are essential for the rest of the season. At some point, up front, in a playoff game, it may be that Curry is guarded by 2 or 3 defenders, and someone needs to take the lead in a decisive possession. Knowing in advance who you can trust in these situations makes a huge difference. Furthermore, this phase can strengthen collective sense. When the squad understands that it cannot depend exclusively on the brilliance of one player, the tendency is to increase each one's individual responsibility. More focus, more discipline, more attention to detail, the Western Conference, and the big picture. If we look at the Western Conference as a whole, we see a competitive environment but not dominated by a single unreachable super team. Several teams have quality, but they all also have weaknesses, pending adjustments, important players dealing with injuries or adaptation. That means Curry's brief absence doesn't eliminate the Warriors from the conversation. In a long season, almost every team goes through moments of turbulence. What separates those who go far from those who stay along the way is not the total absence of problems, but the way they react to them. If Golden State manages to get through this period while maintaining competitiveness, adjusting for mistakes, developing its young players and reinforcing its defensive identity, Curry's return could function almost like a second start of the season, with the team more mature and better prepared. The role of the fan. It is not just the team that is tested. In moments like this, it's not just the players and the coaching staff who are tested, the crowd is too. Being a fan isn't just about celebrating impossible three-pointers or lifting a trophy. Being a fan involves accepting injuries, bad phases, games where nothing goes right, news that scares you, and yet choose to continue there, accompanying, supporting, demanding responsibly, and believing in the work that is being done. It is very easy to abandon the team when things are not ideal. It's difficult to maintain confidence when the main player needs to stay away and the table brings challenges. But it is precisely there that the identity of a fan base reveals itself. If you are here, following every detail, wanting to understand the diagnosis, the impact, the future, that already says a lot about your involvement. And it's this type of involvement that fuels a true community around a team. Looking ahead, what we can expect. When Curry returns, and everything indicates that this will happen in a relatively short period of time, he will probably find a different team than the one he left. Not in names, but in experience. If the squad takes advantage of this period without him to grow, take on responsibilities and correct flaws, his return could enhance all of this. The confidence of the supporting players increases, the variety of offensive options increases, the defense gains more shape, and the team becomes more difficult for opponents to study. Therefore, this does not need to be remembered just as that moment in Houston when Curry limped and everyone despaired. It could become the turning point of a season, the watershed between a team that depended almost exclusively on the talent of a star and a team that learned to sustain its collective level even in the midst of difficulties. Now it's up to you. I want to know your vision. When you saw Curry limping, what went through your mind? Do you believe the team has enough depth to withstand this absence? Who do you think needs to take the lead during this period? Leave your comment, share your opinion, bring your current reading. This space here exists precisely for that, for us to talk, reflect, and experience basketball together, not only when everything is perfect, but especially when the team is put to the test. If you want to continue following every update on Curry's recovery, rotation changes, game-by-game performance analysis, and the Warriors' entire trajectory throughout the season, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you don't just get the final score, you get context, game reading, and a human look at everything that happens. Stephen Curry will return. He will return once again after facing the pain, the treatment, the days away from the court. And when he returns, the question will be, what did the Warriors do with that time without him? Did they grow or decline? I choose to believe that this team will use this phase as fuel, that you will emerge stronger, more aware, more prepared. And if you've come this far with me, it's because, deep down, you also want to believe that. We follow together, game by game, news by news, victory or defeat, always with an eye not only on the score, but on the story that is being built. and I'll meet you in the next video to continue following step by step the Warriors' journey. And to close, I want you to think about the following with me. Every great history of champions goes through nights like this. It's not just the titles raised, the celebrations, and the emotional speeches on stage. These are also the moments when the best player falls, the team is questioned, confidence shakes, and still, no one gives up. This is exactly the chapter we are living in now. Stephen Curry is out for a few days, yes. The team will be tested, yes. But it is precisely now that those who just watch are separated from those who truly believe. Either we see this injury as the beginning of the end, or we see it as the turning point of an entire season. And if you're here, I'm sure you're not on the side that gives away the story midway. So if you want to continue understanding every adjustment, every tactical change, every evolution of this squad during Curry's absence and after his return, the next step is very clear. Finish this video and go straight to the Warriors Analysis playlist, which will be in the comment pinned here below. There I delve deeper into reading the game, show numbers that explain what you see on the court, and connect each match to the big plan of the season. Don't let this analysis die here. Click on the Warriors Analysis playlist in the pinned comment. Continue this journey with me and we will follow step by step whether this moment in Houston will be remembered just as a scare or as the beginning of the recovery of a team that still has a lot to prove to the entire NBA.